So we bought all the flip-flops, and then when we went to South Africa, we went into, it's the world's third largest squatters camp, and nobody had shoes on. And so we told everybody, we're like, okay, everybody sit down and put up your feet. You're gonna like everybody in the pageant you look at and you're like, wow, they're gorgeous, they're perfect, they're wonderful. There's no way I have a chance at this. Like, I'm clearly the underdog on every level. But it for me, I was scared to fail, and I had my husband and also one of my really good friends kept telling me, you know, if you're afraid to fail and you don't do something just because you're afraid to fail, you've already failed. So I love to go do 5Ks and bring my kids. They wear their Halloween costumes year round. They're 5, they're twins, they're little, and they love to run. So one of my favorite things is bringing them to charity events in their Halloween costumes. And I've usually got my crown on, my sash, and a full poofy ball gown, and they love to sprint. So as soon as they go, and then I'm like madly chasing after them.
The glitz and glam is the fame, but it's the work backstage that makes the game. I'm Crystel and Bandal, your host. Come with me behind the lens and watch their stories unfold. I'm really excited for our next guest. She is another pageant queen, but she's not from Australia. She's actually from the States. She is the current Miss World International Misses for 2020, and I heard that she's been doing some incredible stuff. She's doing a lot of volunteering, and she's being very active in the community despite the unexpected circumstances that we're in at the moment. Please welcome onto Behind the Lens, Cassandra Wallace. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome onto Behind the Lens, Cassandra Wallace, all the way from America.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's such a pleasure to be with you.
We're so excited to know more about you. Now, I know that you've been doing some incredible work in your reign and also all the way leading up to the titles that you've won. But I want to know, how has your childhood been like, and were you always dreaming of winning some titles?
You know, I'm probably not a typical pageant person when it comes to this, because I know lots of people that get into pageantry have dreamed since they were little girls about being in pageants. And, you know, it was never really anything on my radar. I actually grew up in a pretty poor family, and which is where my heart for volunteering comes from, is my family was a recipient of eating at food banks and other people's charities. So I've got the perspective of, I've been there. So when I'm helping someone, I'm like, I totally understand. So I hadn't dreamed about it as a little girl. It was just something that I never thought would be possible. And especially after being married, having kids, I didn't even know that was something you could do after that point, because the only pageant stuff I had ever seen was, you know, like 18-year-olds on TV or whatever. I had no idea. And it was just a surprise to me that I could even do it. So it was just sort of a blessing out of nowhere, really.
That's incredible. Well, what were you dreaming of doing when you were a little girl?
You know, honestly, I heard someone come talk at my school about, this kind of gross, but there's like, these things that were infecting livestock in Africa and were killing all the livestock. And then it was really hard for the local farmers because their livestock was all dying of something that if you just had this really simple vaccine, like anybody else would have access to in a more developed country, then it would be totally fine. And so I heard someone talk about that and say, oh, they just need people to go volunteer to go do it. So in 2nd grade, I went up to the guy that was giving the presentation and I was like, let's go. He's like, you're not old enough to do that. And I was like, oh, I still want to go help people and do that. That sounds super fun. So I saved up all my babysitting money and did like odds and ends jobs around the neighborhood. And when I was 13, I did that. I flew to Africa and helped inoculating cattle to help people out there, because my heart just felt this passion for these people that I'm like, oh, there's such a simple solution to their problem and they just don't have access to it because they don't know. And I know, so I want to go help. So my dream as a little girl is I wanted to go to Africa and I wanted to help people. I've been super blessed to be able to go there 7 times. So it's been fun, but that's what I wanted to do when I was a little kid.
Wow, actually really incredible. So you've always been passionate about helping other people. To be wanting to do that from second grade and being told that you're too young and saved everything up to do it on when you were 13. How did that feel for you to be doing it finally?
It was really exciting, honestly, because it took me so long because I started saving all my money when I was in second grade. Like every time I'd get anything, I saved it, counted in my piggy bank, and it just it was really exciting. My mom definitely was a little nervous. She's like, "You're actually going to go to Africa?" And I was like, "Yes, this is going to be so awesome. I'm going to help people. It's going to be incredible." And I mean, I had tons of people tell me I couldn't do it. I was too young, and I was like, "It's okay. I can do it. Let's do this." So it was amazing to be able to see like the hard work be able to make my dream a reality. It was very cool.
I love that. I love that mindset that even though some people were like, "Are you sure?" kind of making you feel like you should doubt yourself or doubt the decision that you made, you still went and go ahead and did it. Now, when you went into Africa at that age, what were some of the things that you had to do as a volunteer?
I did a lot of different stuff actually. So there were food distribution, which is something that's super near and dear to my heart. Like I truly believe people can't live up to their full potential without a full stomach. So very passionate about helping feed people. So I've done a lot in Africa about hauling in food that was donated, like the UN and a lot of other charities will donate food at major distribution centers. But then remote villagers, because there's no internet, there's no phones, don't have access to any of that. So it often takes somebody to go in there and cart the first few bags of food in and out and to tell the locals where it's at to like get the distribution going. So I did a lot of that. I worked with, helped out a lot of like the women with their chores and stuff. I've washed a lot of clothes by hand. I played with a lot of babies and kids, brought school supplies, did like kind of a vacation Bible school with the kids, bought crafts and games, and just kind of hung out, and wherever there was a need, I helped with that. I've run soup kitchens over there. I've helped bring in clothes to be distributed. The really cute story is my husband wanted to bring flip-flops one of the times that we went, because he's like, everybody needs flip-flops. So we went into Old Navy before we went, and they have these sales where you can get like cheap flip-flops. We brought this huge duffel bag, and we're like, we want all your flip-flops. And they're like, what size? And we're like, no, all of them. So we bought all the flip-flops. And then when we went to South Africa, we went into, it's the world's third largest squatters camp, and nobody had shoes on. And so we told everybody, we're like, okay, everybody sit down and put up your feet. We're going to like see, like how do you explain to somebody how to try on shoes who's never worn a pair of shoes before? So we had them put up their feet, and we were like, hold up the flip-flops to them. And that was just something that was like a super fun and heartwarming experience to then see everybody running around in their flip-flops.
I can imagine. Now, when you were doing these volunteering, what was your interaction like with the people that you encountered in Africa while you were volunteering? Were they open to your help? Did you experience any challenges, or what was your favorite moment out of it?
I think at first people are always apprehensive of just the unknown and who is this? I don't know this person. But I mean, my experience has wildly been that people were very warm and very receptive. And I didn't have any issues anywhere I went. Everybody was very kind. It's funny just to see different cultures just because things are different. So I vividly remember in West Africa, it was super funny. That the little kids, a lot of them had never seen a white person before. And so they brought these rags and they came up and they were rubbing my skin because they wanted to get the white off and see what color I looked like underneath. So they were like scrub and scrub and scrub. And I was like, it doesn't come off. I'm just this tasty. So it was some stuff like that was like super fun to be able to just experience something different and unique that I wouldn't necessarily be able to experience in my hometown for sure. Mm-hmm. So that was probably one of my favorite memories over there, doing that.
So it's kind of like a learning experience, not just for you, but for them as well.
Yeah. No, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I got to do a lot of different things in a lot of different places that I definitely would not have been able to do otherwise. And it's pretty cool to be able to go in and help somebody and then have them. It's actually very selfish to help people because you get this really warm and fuzzy feeling like, when they're all excited to be helped and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so cool that I was lucky enough to be a part of this. So it's definitely very rewarding to volunteer for sure.
That's really, really incredible to hear that you've been doing it from a young age, not just when you started competing, but it's something that you've always been passionate about, and I really, really admire that about you. Now,
Oh, thank you.
after your first trip on your when you were 13, you went back 7 times to Africa to do the same volunteering.
Yes.
What about it made you always come back?
It was I had to take off a couple of years after I went when I was 13, and I wasn't able to go back till I was 15 because I actually got super sick while I was there the first time. I actually contracted a very rare form of malaria that actually usually kills people within the first 2 weeks of getting it. So they didn't even want to ship me when I got it in Africa. They didn't even want. They're like, it's not even worth shipping you back to like some really good hospital because there's nothing you can do. You're either going to live or you're not going to live. And I remember everybody saying when I came back, like, oh my gosh, you can never go back to Africa. You can never go back and help people. Like, you almost died last time. And I'm like, I feel like this is what God wants me to do. And I feel like this is what I'm put here to do. Is I have a heart for helping people and I really want to. And so I just kept going. I kept finding opportunities and places and organizations that were saying, hey, we desperately need someone to come volunteer. So when I was a little bit older, about 19, I started organizing trips and dragging everybody else along with me. So I'd bring a bunch of college age and high school kids. And it was really fun to be able to take people who had never had the opportunity to volunteer before and be like, hey, here, you can come work in a soup kitchen. It's super easy. You just put the food on the plate. But guess what? That person on the other end, this is the only meal they get during the day. So this is hugely important to them. Something super simple and easy you can do. And look at the impact you just had. Like, so amazing. So for me, I kind of developed a passion of dragging everyone else along with me. So that was super fun to be able to have the opportunity to bring others and share in that experience.
Now, when you're doing these kind of volunteering work, what would you say would be like a lesson that you learned out of all of these experiences as volunteering?
Probably like a big lesson is just to actually follow through with what you say. I know a lot of times I've showed up places and people are surprised that I'm actually going to work. They're like, oh, we thought you were just showing up to take pictures. And I'm like, no, I said I was going to volunteer. Like, what are the jobs that you need done? I'm super happy to be here and help. And so I think for me, it's just, it's kind of been a mind opener to just pay attention to what you say you're going to do and follow through. And I think that has a lot of value to it.
That's incredible. Now we'll talk a little bit more about your advocacy and volunteering a little bit later on, but in pageantry, how did you get started into it? So you mentioned that you were doing a bikini contest and
Yes.
someone mentioned to you, would you be interested? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. So I'm doing the bikini contest, and then during a portion of it, they read something about you. So they had asked me shortly before, tell us something about you. So I was like, oh, I love to go to Africa and volunteer. So they were reading about that while I was doing the bikini contest. And at the end, I won. So I went to go thank the judges because I was so excited to win the bikini contest. And one of the judges was a beauty queen. And she was like, oh my goodness, you should totally do pageants. They're really into volunteer work and you would have a lot of fun. And I was like, oh, I'm married. I have 3 kids. I'm old. I'm not like 18. I can't be in a pageant. And she's like, no, I'm married and have kids too. Like, there's pageants for you when you're in that stage in life. And I was like, really? I totally had no idea. Honestly, I'd never even seen a pageant when I signed up and joined my first pageant. I'd never watched one. I was not super sure what was going on with everything. And I was like, okay, I like doing community work. I'll sign up and give it a chance and see how it goes. And that's kind of how I got started.
Now, when you went to your first pageant event, what was going through your mind to be surrounded by, maybe some of the people that you're competing with might have been doing it longer than you have or have been really dreaming of going on stage and competing. What was it like for you to be in that kind of environment?
It was super intimidating. Most of the girls knew everything pageant. They'd watched all these pageants. They knew all these famous pageant coaches. They all had pageant coaches. They had been competing, most of them, since they were little kids in various forms of stuff. And honestly, I'd never done anything on a stage before. So it was very Well, I'm not used to public speaking. I don't know how to do a pageant walk properly. I didn't know anything about like how to pick a gown. So it was very intimidating to come in and be the least experienced and the only one without a pageant coach and a lot of things like that. So it was super intimidating for me when I showed up for sure.
So how did you handle that? Not to be someone who didn't have a coach and had to do everything on your own. How did you prepare yourself for your competitions?
I'm really big at researching. I'm an enrolled agent by occupation, so I prepare tax returns for people. So my go-to when I don't know how to do something is I start researching it. So I started researching everything about like, hey, what to say or not say in interviews, and read tons and tons of like blogs and watched people like doing like sometimes there's little clips on like YouTube of people that are walking, and so I would like watch it. And I recruited my husband and children. So I actually have a very like wobbled walk naturally. So my husband had this idea to take quarters and line them up on a string for where my foot should hit on each of my steps. So I would go and practice walking with the string and the quarters, and then my kids would walk back and forth with me, and we would practice for hours so that I could get a straight, that like pretty pageant walk that everyone does. It's like way harder to do if you haven't. So we just sort of like I recruited them and they helped, and you know, like I'm sure I was the entertainment for the neighborhood because we did out a huge front porch. And my kids would put on their Halloween costumes, and I'm there with my like 6.5-foot stilettos, just walking back and forth. What are you doing? I'm like, I'm learning to pageant walk.
I've never heard of that method before. That's really interesting, but you know what? It worked, and
Yes.
it's helped get you to where you are right now. What was your support like from your family, or let's say your neighborhood, when you're doing your practicing on your porch? What was your support like? Were they shocked that you wanted to join pageants, or were they like really supportive from the start?
Everyone was pretty supportive. I mean, my whole family's not really into pageants either, and everyone's like, what are you doing? What's the pageant called? But everyone thought it was cool. They're like, all right, cool, that's awesome. And some of the other neighborhood kids joined in. So now all of the little boys in my neighborhood can pageant walk very well. And I mean, it was just a fun process to have everybody help me with. And my whole neighborhood and my family were definitely rooting for me when I went. So that was really kind and greatly appreciated.
Oh, that's so nice. That's really good to hear. Now, going through all the pageant experiences that you've had, what would you say has been a challenge in the pageant industry for you, and how did you overcome it?
I think my biggest challenge was probably like the public speaking. It really terrified me at first because not something I had a lot of experience doing, and it was very intimidating being with people who had tons of experience speaking, and to see, I mean, everybody in the pageant you look at and you're like, wow, they're gorgeous, they're perfect, they're wonderful. There's no way I have a chance at this. Like, I'm clearly the underdog on every level. But it for me, I was scared to fail. And my husband and also one of my really good friends kept telling me, you know, if you're afraid to fail and you don't do something just because you're afraid to fail, you've already failed. So you might as well give it a shot, because at least you have a chance of succeeding. Whereas if you just don't even try, and I had a really hard time, a lot of times in life, I don't want to try things because I am scared to fail. So for me, just being able to like get up there, like I told everyone, I'm like, if I can get up there and I can open my mouth and I can walk across the stage and I don't face plant, it's a win.
Yeah,
it's so terrified. But I took a risk. I went out there and it worked out really well.
That's good. What about it were you afraid of failing? Why were you afraid of failing on stage?
I don't know. I just, in general in life, I'm afraid of failing things. Like I didn't even take, I've been in the tax industry for 13 years and I never took my exam until about a year and a half ago because I was afraid I would fail it. I just, in general in life, I'm a little nervous to try new things, despite the fact that I have traveled a lot of places and do very adventurous. Personally, I don't know, I'm just nervous to try things. And so that's something that I've been working on. And, you know, there's on stage, I thought you could see everybody staring at you, which would have been super intimidating, but the lights are so bright, you can't see anyone. So
That's so true.
it's
Yeah.
actually really nice because you're like, oh, I can't see a single person here. So I'm just going to go do my thing and call it good.
How did you overcome that fear and just combat and just keep pushing through? What were some of the things that you did to prepare yourself?
I did a lot, which I had heard from blogs and stuff like that. I had found that it was helpful to practice doing stuff in the mirror and practice recording yourself. So I'd have my kids record me walk. I would also find the most critical person I knew or people that I know, and I would say, hey, can I practice my interview with you? Because if you find somebody who's like your best friend, who's going to always be your yes person, not a good person to practice in front of, because whatever you do, they're going to be like, you're wonderful, you're awesome. So I found people that I knew would be super critical of everything, and I would give them, here's my speech that I'm going to say on stage. Here's my walk. What do you think? And then I would get their list of things, and I'm like, awesome. Now I know what to improve on. So that was one thing that I did, was just find people who were brutally honest.
How did you handle that to face people who were really straightforward or just really brutally honest, as you said? How were you taking that kind of feedback? Did you just come in with a completely open mind that you were willing to listen to everything that they said?
Yeah, because if you look at it this way, like, hey, I need to know what areas my weaknesses are. Often you don't notice your own weaknesses, and somebody, if you're asking them and they are giving you criticism, if you take it as, hey, any of the things they point out to me, I now can take that, fix it, and then when I'm in front of a judge, now my weakness is no longer a weakness. Now it's a strength. So if you come at it at that approach, instead of being like, oh man, someone's being really critical, they don't like this, they don't like that about me. Instead, in life in general, anytime anybody gives you some negative feedback, be like, awesome, now I know what area to beef up my game in any area of my life, and now it's no longer a weakness. So you can take people's brutal honesty and let it hurt your feelings, or you can take it and you can turn it around and use it to make yourself better.
That's true. Now, for people who are kind of like struggling with that part of their progress, where they're not able to take feedback very well, what would your advice be on choosing what is real critical feedback and what's just hate?
Well, I think a lot of that comes from the source. So if you're having somebody who you have animosity with giving you critical feedback, might just be a hater. But if it's somebody who like you actually know and you know that they have your best interest at heart, that's who I would be listening to. So I wouldn't just like pick anybody, but I'm pretty sure everybody has someone in their life that's a little more critical than others, but that still loves you and still cares about you and wants the best for you. That's the person that you want to critique you.
That's true. It's kind of just being really aware of the person that you're going to be interacting with. Now, looking back at your career so far in the pageant industry, what has been your favorite moment?
It's kind of it's so hard to pick. Definitely being crowned, I was shocked. Like, I stood there and I didn't go up, and the girl next to me was like, Cassandra, they said your name. And I'm like looking around. I know there's no one else named Cassandra in my like pageant. I'm looking around, I'm like, really? I was like, they all laughed and stuff. But that was super fun. Also, one of my favorite moments is I really love bringing my kids to do charity work with me. And I also tend to overdress for everything. So I love to go do 5Ks and bring my kids. They wear their Halloween costumes year round. They're 5, they're twins, they're little. And they love to run. So one of my favorite things is bringing them to charity events in their Halloween costumes. And I've usually got my crown on and my sash and a full poofy ball gown, and they love to sprint. So as soon as they go, and then I'm like madly chasing after them. Like everybody's like, what is going on? There's kids in Halloween costumes and Beauty Queen chasing her. And it's really fun at the end because it's a great opportunity because everybody wants to know why my kids are in Halloween costumes, what I'm doing there in a ball gown. And it's a really cool way to raise awareness for charities and to help at fundraisers. And I love that my children are involved with it. And because it's so different to be like, hey, go help people, it's good, versus having them actually there doing something. So that's probably one of my favorite things about my reign is it just like melts my heart to see my children so involved and being so excited. Like it's been hard with COVID. My kids keep asking, when are we going to go do another run? And I'm like, well, we can't do it right now. But so that's definitely one of my favorite things for sure.
That is so cute to see that they're doing it with you too. How did you get them to, how did you get them interested in being involved in charities at such a young age as well?
Well, I actually has nothing to do with me. My kids are super awesome. I have three actually, and they have really big hearts. And so there's been lots of times where, like my kids will see somebody on the side of the road and they're like, hey, let's go feed them, mom, because they recognize somebody in need. Or there'll be times where like there was a presentation at our church about like I think it's like shoe boxes they send kids all over the world with like school supplies and stuff like that. And my oldest son heard about that and was like, mom, let's go, let's do a bunch of shoe boxes. He went and emptied his whole piggy bank and like bought all these kids shoe boxes. And I was like, are you sure you want to spend all your money? You don't know these kids, you'll never see them. And he's like, yeah, they don't have toys and I have toys. And so I mean, really, I've been blessed to be able to facilitate it for them. But they honestly, all three just have huge giant hearts, and whenever they like hear of an opportunity, they're like, yes, let's go. And so if I'm ever going to an event and I'm like, hey, I'm going to go do this, they're all like, yeah, let's go.
Oh, that's so sweet. I'm sure that they'll be doing some more incredible stuff. You never know, they might be doing some volunteering stuff that you've done as well when they grow up.
Yes, I hope so. That'd be super cool.
Coming from a family that weren't very wealthy, she found herself relying on food banks, much like Fishline, the organization that she is consistently and actively working as a reigning queen. I've heard today from her interview that she's already been doing volunteering work in community service from a very young age of 13. She's gone through to Africa to help volunteer and assist with the community in anything that they needed. And she's returned many times, and she continues to help the community survive their hardest and most challenging times. I've learned so many things from Cassandra today. I've learned as well that actions really do speak louder than words. Everything that she's done is really inspiring, and it's no surprise that she's a role model and inspiring many other young women or boys out there who's wanting to make a change. She's making a really big ripple effect with all of the community service that she's doing, and I really can't wait to see what other projects she's going to be working on in the future. I'm sure that you've all learned something, at least one thing from Cassandra today, and make sure that you continue staying tuned to Behind the Lens. Hit the like button, make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel and following all of our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram. And remember that the glitz and glam is the fame, but it's the work backstage that makes the game. And I will see you all next time.